Awesome.
Hi.
Hi, Asbirg. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm good. I'm very excited, Ololade. Do I say your name right?
Yes, you got my
Yeah.
name right. I was also going to ask you if you actually did get my own name right. If I actually did get your own name right, because I was saying Asbirg. I'm not sure if I got it right as well.
Yeah, it's Asbirg, but it's not easy for English-speaking people.
Okay,
But I
awesome.
think you're doing fine. Yeah.
Right. I'm so glad to have you on the call. Thank you so much for honoring my invitation. Uh,
Oh, it's on my side. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much.
awesome, awesome. Okay, so we'll get right into it. I want to welcome everybody to this particular edition of the African Creative Hub. Um, The African Creative Hub is an initiative of the IP Business Capital, and we exist to empower storytellers, right, with the requisite skills and knowledge that they need to tell amazing local African stories, right? So we are championing the cause for the growth of local stories within Nigeria and also within Africa as well. It's my pleasure to have on the call this afternoon Asbirg Naranjo. Thank you so much for honoring my invitation. We'll proceed right into the conversation, but before I proceed, let me introduce Ashbig.
Shall I start?
Let me introduce you. Let me give a proper
Hmm.
formal introduction. Let me
Oh, yeah.
introduce.
Go for it.
Also, just to confirm, can you still see me?
Yes, I can still see you.
Awesome, awesome. Just a minute, please. Okay. Asbirg Naranjo is a German director, writer, and producer. She grew up in Germany, some Mozambique and London before settling in Germany over 10 years ago. She studied cultural and social anthropology, and she has released two short films known as SELDA and FLORES. Amazing. She completed a master's degree in film studies with a thesis on the connection between Michael Gondry's short and feature films. She's currently in post production with a third short film, The Neighbor. Awesome, 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 awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Aspinajo. Thank you so much once again for joining us. Okay, so right, we'll get into the conversation, right? I just mentioned
Thank you
now
so much
that,
for this
you know,
introduction.
awesome, awesome. Okay, so I just mentioned that you've actually released two short films, which is Zelda and Flaws. And then you're currently in the production phase of another film known as Neighbor. So please, could you take us, could you shed some insight, into how you actually did venture into filmmaking? What was your journey like? I know that I've actually heard a lot from lots of filmmakers, across Nigeria and even across Africa, who say that they initially didn't want to get into filmmaking, but somehow they found that they had the passion for storytelling, the passion for directing and producing, and they find themselves in the filmmaking space. So give us an insight into your journey, right?
Hmm.
Let us know how you began, how you got into the film industry, and how you started as a filmmaker. Over to
Hmm.
you.
Thank you so much. Again, I'm so happy to be here. For me, it's very special because I'm working on a Nigerian story too. So some people are might wondering, what are you doing here? What are you up to? And let me just share that I'm very, very excited. I met a couple of Nigerian people within the last months and weeks. And
Awesome.
I hope I can come and visit this year. So just that,
We'll be
yeah,
glad to
saying
have
that
you.
before. So yeah. So my journey into filmmaking started when I was very young. I think lots of filmmakers gonna share a similar story. But I grew up without a television. We didn't have a television, only my grandma. So we needed to go upstairs and ask her if we can watch something. But I also grew up on a farm. So it was more like helping my parents or, of course, going to school. But film and TV didn't had such a big role. But I always loved sneaking into my friend's place and watching MTV videos. I think lots of people can relate to this. So I always loved storytelling. And what I also liked was going to the cinema every now and then with my parents and watching really, art house cinema from different countries, from Greece and from France and other European countries. Now, actually, it starts to open up more to the world, and I'm so excited about that. So filmmaking was always very special and dear to my heart, but I didn't have the courage to really start it. I always thought I need something special, I need more education, etc. But already when I lived in London 2007, I really wanted to do that, but the door didn't open. So I proceed to study sociology and anthropology because, as written on my Instagram page, I'm very passionate about people and their stories from all over the place and world. So I was like, okay, this is really familiar to my passions and what I really want to do. And there I had a course, it was called Visual Anthropology, and it was more about documentary filmmaking. So I did a documentary on my friend. She's an illustrator and she is drawing on wood, not on paper, but on wood. And that was my first one. And I did it completely on my own, to be honest. And in the post-production, some people helped me. And then I worked at different short film festivals, so more like on an organizational part. And I watched loads of short films, and I think the passion for short film just grew. And I always had all these people in my life, and I wanted to share their story and what they are giving into my life. So that's how FLORES came along, and I developed the story and got all my friends together. I think also lots of filmmakers can relate to that your friends and family are always helping you out with working a day for you. And so we were filming FLORES within one day in the city where I live now. And now comes the interesting part. I did that in 2014 and 15, working on that. And only in the last months, it really got the recognition that I was hoping for back then. So my friend said, Asbirg, often you are ahead of time. And it's a really happy movie. And people back then at festivals said, actually, it's too happy, we can't show it. So now after COVID, everybody's longing for some hopeful and cheerful stories. And now it's showing at festivals.
Awesome. Please go ahead. I mean, I'm
Okay.
enjoying the story.
Please interrupt me if I'm like blah 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 blah. So what's really nice about FLORES, it's only like 3 minutes 30, but I for a few months and weeks I looked for the right music, and then I came across, that was back in 2015, and I came across the music album from Jose Gonzalez. He's an Argentinian Swedish musician. And I heard the perfect song, but he was quite big already during that time. So I was like, okay, how am I going to approach him and ask him if I can use this song, right? So my friend was saying, oh, he's actually having a concert in Amsterdam. And I was close to Amsterdam back then. And he was like, maybe you can meet him. And I was like, okay, let's see. So I was waiting outside the venue for like 2-3 hours and asking. First I was very shy, and then after I think after an hour I asked someone, is he actually around? And then he said, yeah, he is here, he's gonna come by eventually.
Awesome.
So actually at some point he came out and I was like, hey Jose, and he was like, who are you? And then he was very friendly, and I explained to him, I made this short film and actually your song would just be perfect. And then I wanted to show it to him on my phone, and my phone didn't work at that time. It's like, what happens in those seconds? And then he had a look at his own phone on Vimeo, and he was like, oh, it's very nice. Go for it. You can use this song. It's not commercial, so just go for it. So really crazy, and I couldn't believe it. But this song really made the short film perfect. So now it's really beautiful, and it just
Awesome.
all came together.
Wow. Wow. So inspiring. So inspiring. I mean, you've said a whole lot, but I've picked some important aspects of what you just mentioned, right? You spoke about the fact that when you began, you didn't have enough courage to step into the industry. You have always wanted to do it, but at some point you had to tell yourself that, look, I'm going for this and I'm going to do it. So the first thing was the courage to actually get into the industry and to start to do the things that you're passionate about. Another thing that stood out to me was people. We need people. The film industry is talent based. It's about collaboration. It's about people. And the mere fact that in a short while you were able to gather your friends, gather people, I mean, that's fantastic. It tells a lot about the fact that you have good people skills, right? Then another thing you also mentioned was the fact that you had to actually scout for talent, right? You had to scout for people who can support the movie and bring the movie to life. And you had to go the route of looking for a music composer, somebody who's going to bring a nice song into the film to make sure that the film comes out appealing, right? To the target audience. And I mean, for me, that's quite profound. Those are three important elements of filmmaking, right? Because the truth of the matter is that we have amazing people who want to tell amazing stories, but they are not bold enough. I, as a person, I'm looking forward to telling stories, authentic stories. And I was in a meeting yesterday, right? It was a storytelling class. One of the biggest production companies in Nigeria. I don't know if you know about them, Film One. Film One.
No,
Okay, you can check
I'm
them
writing
out.
it down right now.
They're doing amazing things in the film industry. So I was in a storytelling masterclass, and one of the top production officers was actually in that class, and she was talking about storytelling. And one of the things she said that stood out to me was the fact that you have to be bold and courageous. You have stories that you want to tell that only you can tell those stories. And that thing just resonated with me. If I have an idea and I sell that idea to you, the way you will tell that story will not be the same way I will tell that story, right? So we have stories, especially Africans. We have local,
Exactly.
interesting stories that people across the world are longing for. But
Exactly.
not many people are bold. Not many people are willing to come out of their shell and tell the. I, for once, I'm going to tell amazing stories. Just a matter of time. I'm going to
Yes,
and those stories can only be told by me because
exactly.
they're coming from a place within myself, right? Because it's coming from me and can only be told excellently by me. So if there's anything you're going to be taking away from this class, if you're an African creative and you join the classes, anything you're going to be taking away, please just understand that you have a voice
Exactly.
and that yes, and that you have a story to tell. And if there's a story within you that is burning within you, why not? Start to put the items together, start to pull the plan, start to pull the plan, the people, the resources, and before you know it, you have a film. And the interesting part of it is that you don't have to start big, you can start small, right? Asbirg here started with just one short film. And she said after COVID, people started to long for the movie.
Mm.
If the movie is authentic, if the movie is coming from a place of passion, people would watch it. People would long for it. People would listen. People would learn. People would glean from it, right? So it's important that you start to put all the resources together. Start to believe that only you can tell those stories authentically than any other person else, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's the key takeaway for me. Your story is quite inspiring, and you have to be bold. I mean, as big was she said she was outside the hall for like 2 hours just asking who is this guy before she finally met him. You have to be able to sell the idea. I'm sure that's what you did. You have to be able to sell the idea. Yes, please. You want to say something?
Exactly, exactly, Rolada. I'm so with you. I mean, um, the last days before, when I was kind of thinking about, okay, what are we going to talk about, etc., I came to the same point again. I was like, authenticity. It's a difficult word. Authenticity. You know what I mean? Um, I think that's all what it is about, because of course from that point passion is growing, and you're showing your heart. And
Yeah.
of course, when you are passionate about a story, probably not all producers, probably not all investors, or even if you are applying for a fund, not everybody's gonna jump right into it. But there are
Mm-hmm.
gonna be people who are just gonna look for it, and it's gonna touch them, and they're gonna go for it. Like if this morning I had a meeting with two other people. It was a jury meeting, and we're going to give away very small funds within the city. It's an organization. It's happening the first time. And we looked at 23 applications. And there were applications where you couldn't really grasp and feel what they were going to do and what are they going to talk about and where they want to go. And you couldn't, I think it's the same. It wasn't authentic. You couldn't really feel what's happening. So I think the art of filmmaking is that you have ideas in your head and in your heart, and then transport them on the paper. And what I learned from my last short film production, From the Neighbor, is really asking for help, asking others for feedback. I was often too shy, and now I have this really beautiful network of feedback friends. It's a small circle, and I'm so grateful and thankful for them, because they looking at it with a loving perspective. Like, they don't want to harm me, of course, but they want to improve the story, and that's what you need. And I think what I really took away from it, and we were filming in autumn, and also afterwards, was like, people are very, if you ask them for help, they're happy to help you. Definitely. It's just like,
Yeah.
don't be too proud and don't be too shy to ask people, because the most people I know is like, they would be happy to help out for sure.
Definitely. I mean, that's so profound. I used to be very shy.
I can't tell. Look what you did today. It's amazing.
I'm telling you. So I used to be very shy, but we realized that we are in a world where we need one another. I mean, you can't do things by yourself. We ride on the shoulders of each other. The same way I'm riding on the shoulders of people in my network today. It's the same way some people behind me are riding on my shoulders, right? So it's about people, it's about networks, it's about relationship. I mean, you can't, and I used to be very, very afraid of asking for help until I started to learn that look, when you
Me
ask for
too. Me too.
when you ask for help, people would help you. People would help you. Sometimes I just go on my WhatsApp, I just please help me. Oh, I'm looking for this thing. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to 10 messages. People are responding, people will help, right? So it's really about coming out of your shell, right? And understanding that we
Mm.
ride on the shoulders of each other. Nobody has it all together. We are learning, we are growing, we are building, and we need people. So
Yeah.
the most important resource that you will need as a filmmaker is people, your
Mhm.
network. Your network, quite important, quite important. So profound. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
and it doesn't need to be perfect, like, it doesn't need to be a big producer or something, but it's enough if you say, I'm looking for help, for a small fund, for a small amount of money, and I just want to see what happens. Maybe, and then maybe a few weeks later or months later, somebody else is meeting somebody else, right? It's not happening all at once. And what also helped me a lot is to listen to your intuition, like listening to your gut feeling, and really, because of course you know quite a few people, but then really ask the people that you have a good feeling about, where you're like, okay, I can trust this person and this is going to help me. So
Awesome, awesome. I like the fact that you mentioned your gut feelings. Yes. I used to be very, very, I mean, I like the fact that we are very open in this conversation. I used to be very, very afraid of following my guts.
mm,
So there's that deep instinct on the inside that says, don't do it this way, do it this way. And when I'm afraid and I make that mistake, it bounces back. I literally make that mistake, right? So instead of doing A, I go and do B. I know I'm supposed to do A, then I do B. And then when I go on the journey of B and I lose it and I make the mistakes and the errors and I've wasted time, then I'll now come back and say I could have done A. Right. So I have learned over time that once I'm faced with a decision, and I know that my gut is saying do A, I just leave it and just do it. And when I go
Exactly.
on the journey and I come back to it, I realize that it was a good decision after all.
Yeah.
So, yeah, yeah.
I
So
don't know
on
how
this,
it is for you, but I think often A is very quiet, right?
yeah,
Plan A is often very quiet. It's only there for a few seconds, and I often didn't dare to even think, oh, this could be it. And then exactly like you said, Ololade, I was following down this path, and then after a while, I was like, no, this was the wrong direction. I need to go back. But of course, also it happened to me that I needed to follow along the whole road, messed it up, and needed to change track. Right, that happened also, and also recently. So this is like I'm still learning, but
yes,
very important. In my opinion, it's very important.
very important, very important. So following your gut feelings, very important. Okay, so let's move to the next question. So from your professional bio, I could see that you had actually secured a fund, all right, from the German Fund and City Council, if I'm not wrong.
That's right. Yeah.
Awesome. So, in your opinion, what are the most important things creatives need to get right to secure funding? Right. So, what are the one important things that they need to take into consideration before they can get funding?
hmm So I can only share this from like my own perspective and from like a single story. Now the second story is starting, but it was successful, so I'm happy to share it. So what happened? The first two ones were very low budget. I mean, I'm talking about like 100 euros, not more, to be really honest. And then with the neighbor, I was like, I want to be able to pay the people. I want to be able to pay my friends. I mean, again, a lot of friends helped, so I could give them like a minimum. It wasn't a whole normal work day, to be honest, too. So what happened again? Live inspiration and gut feeling. So what happened? It was about a year ago. I applied to the cultural part of the city council, and I applied for 3,000 euros. And a few weeks later, I got feedback, and they only gave me 2,000, and that wasn't enough at all. And I was like, okay, I was really sad. I was like, I really wanted to film like in 3 weeks what's going on. And it's also a film that is the story is told in winter time. So here in April, March, everything becomes green again. I mean, we're longing for it because it's like gray and cold and rainy. So so I was like, okay, maybe I need to postpone the filming, although I don't want to, and I need to postpone like for 6 months later, right? Because when everything is green, I can't tell a winter story outside. It's, of course, the leaves can fall down at some point, etc., but it didn't. So you know what happened, and that's what I'm always. I mean, probably also a few people can agree to this. When things happen and you receive a no, in the first moment we are sad about it, right? We're like, okay, I really hope this would work out. All my hopes were rising for this opportunity. I had this plan in my head, and then life happens, right? All these surprises. So what happened with me was like, okay, maybe if I don't get this fund, I can apply to an even bigger one. And I have never thought about it before. I was too shy. I was too afraid. I was like, I didn't study film practical. I did film science. So I was like, probably they're going to look at my CV and say, oh, she didn't study film, so we can't take her. And then I was like, okay, I have all this time. Let me just try. So I wrote an application, and there we come to your question, Ololade, like, what does it need? And from my perspective, it needs a pitch paper, a strong pitch paper where you really describe your idea, like a log line, where you write this synopsis. I hope I say it right. Again, my German accent.
You're
These are
getting it right.
Thank you. So these are points where you, like I said before, where you can also ask people for help, right? Like you can ask them, could you read my synopsis? Like, could you give me feedback? Can you understand what I'm trying to say? And then you would also put in some like a mood board, like different pictures where you say, pictures like this, or like this atmosphere I would like to have in the film later on. And also you would add your CV, maybe a short CV and a nice picture. Like I opened for this project this morning, I opened quite a few CVs without a picture. And I quite like a picture because you know, kind of, okay, what is this person like? So be brave and just put yourself out there, right? Show yourself. And at some point you can also hand in a calculation, maybe a rough calculation, and show for what do you need the money, right? So, and also with this German fund, I really needed to fill in a big calculation and also different forms. But I just tried. I had no idea. I was reading that's also another advice maybe. I read all the regulations very carefully because they were quite picky about small things. Like they wanted everything in a zip file, everything in one PDF. And believe me, sometimes it's really these small admin stuff where you make a mistake and
Yes,
people are like, okay, we're not going to look at it.
you are right. You're right. I mean, when people are giving out funds, especially organizations and institutions, they want to be sure that you are a person that pays attention to details. So if you are shabby about it, if you're not paying attention, they will take you out because they believe that attention to details is important. It's a management skill, right? And they feel like it's important. So if you're not paying attention to, so they get people at those little points, those little details. Where you were told to put something in small letters, you put it in big letters, or you were told to write something of 20 words, you did 100 words. They are watching and they're paying attention to those things. So they get people in those areas faster because they feel like one of the important skills that good managers have is their ability to pay attention to details. So for me, that was fantastic. I mean, having to pay attention to those details is very important. So if you're looking to apply for funding, please pay attention to details.
Yeah,
Read the contracts. For some of these big government contracts, big government funding, they have specific contracts for all those things, right? So read the contract, be sure that you're okay with it, be sure that this is something that you can do, and pay attention to details as well. So important. Then another thing that you said that was profound was having a solid pitch.
mm-hmm.
Yes, having a solid pitch is very important. Now, for those who work in the film space, some people call it pitch, some people call it treatment, where you have the important details about the film, the synopsis, the characters, why it's going to be appealing to the direct target audience, right? And one thing that I always suggest is that when you're going out to meet with people who will fund you, look for people who have done something like that before in the past.
Exactly.
People, yeah, for people like you, right? So, for example, if you're looking to fund an action thriller movie, go and look for the people that love thrillers, that are interested in action. For me, I like action. I like CIA. I like thrillers, right? I mean,
Beautiful.
that's me for you, right? I love them, right? So you have to look for people that are interested in those kinds of journeys. So look for them, interact with them. It's easier to get across to them than people who maybe like comedy or family movies,
Or
right? So
rom-coms, or yeah.
yeah, so those are the important aspects that we need to take into consideration.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
also, I mean, you could even be bold and put already an actor inside or actress and say, I would like to work with them or with somebody like them. Because I met a few actors within the last weeks in different projects, and one was also a student project, so it was without any fund. It was like they worked for free. They were just supporting the project, and I asked a few of them. I was like, I was always very shy, and I didn't dare to ask people like you to be in my short film because I thought it's not paid. And then quite a few actors said, oh, you know what, actually, if I really like the story, I'm happy to be in a short film. I'm happy to be in a short film. It doesn't matter, right? And I was like, wow, okay, lesson learned. I wrote it down, right? Like, and I can just
Yes.
throw it out there. There are so many actors, and
Yes.
sometimes they're even paying a company to make a reel, like a little short reel, to show their work and their abilities, so they can apply for a different casting. So of course they're happy to work in a short film, so they
Yeah.
can have material. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the storytelling value chain begins with the script. Now, one of the best ways you can attach, talent to your stories if they like the story. like you mentioned, if talents like the story, even if they're not going to be paid, they know that they are building some portfolio for the bigger deals that they're looking for. If the story is interesting, you will find talent on that particular movie project. I remember there was a particular film, it was an action thriller. I mean, one of the big blockbusters in Nigeria. I don't know if you've seen it. It's what's the name again? Brotherhood. It's Brother. It was
No,
done
but
by
send me all the names. I write it down too. Send me the link. Send me everything.
it's a net. I think it's an Amazon Prime. It's because it was in the cinemas before now, but right now it's exclusively on Amazon Prime. It's not on Netflix, so because they have a
Yeah,
special
let's see.
with
I will look
Amazon.
for it.
Awesome,
I was so
fantastic.
happy that I found A Sunday Affair on Netflix because I was afraid it wouldn't be available in Europe. So just, yeah, side note.
Yes, it's only on Netflix
Tell me
exclusive.
about Brotherhood.
So Brotherhood, amazing movie, action thriller, fantastic, awesome movie, right? And so one of the things that attracted, because it was one of the most amazing movies. I think it was even the first of its kind in terms of action and thriller that made such, a rapid boom in the industry. Within few weeks, they had hit 300 million in the cinemas and all of that. So it was epic, right? And
Wow.
and she was able to attract talent to that movie. And one of the ways she did that was the story. I mean, when I was
Mhm.
reading the reviews of the actors on the movie, all of them were saying when they read the script, they were like, yes, this is it. So when they read the script, they're like, so when you have a good story, you would attract talent who want to be a part of that story. You would attract actors. They might not
Mhm.
even they might not even be willing to, they might not even want to collect like maybe too much cash or something. You can even negotiate with them that okay, when the movie makes a profit, when it hits a milestone, you give them back
Exactly.
the payment. And like you also mentioned, there's some people as well who are looking to just, build a portfolio so that when the bigger deals come, they can say they've done one or two things. And once the story is interesting, trust me, you'll find talents. So
Yeah,
these are the simple
exactly.
techniques. Yeah. Go on,
And
go on.
Ololade, I don't know. I wanted to ask you a question. In Germany, we have because you're a lawyer, you know this. In Germany, we have, like you said, we have a document. I don't know the English term. It's like exactly what you said. You can kind of make a contract on if you earn anything with the money, with the movie, you're gonna give a little bit of it to the actor. So you can agree on that. So you don't have to pay them after the filming. I don't know what it is called. What is it called in Nigeria? Because I think that would be interesting if you're just starting out to make movies.
Okay, so when you're making a movie and then you really don't have the cash at the moment to pay the actor, right? And then you see then there's an agreement or there's some sort of negotiation that after a particular milestone is reached, the actor will be paid so and so amount of money. It's just is it what the usual practice is that it's done by contract. So we have
Ah,
different
mhm.
types of agreement, yes. So once you meet with the particular actor and then you give the actor the script and you read the terms of the deals and everything, if they're comfortable with the agreement, why not? All of those things will be included in the actors agreement. So there's no particular um special
Term.
name or special term. It's
Mm,
just a contract. Once there's a contract and then you say, okay, you get to have back end payments, right? Once the movie reaches a particular milestone, why not? I mean, actors are always willing to put
mhm.
themselves out there if the story is interesting, if they like the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And talking about stories, I just wanted to jump back a few minutes because I didn't comment on it, but I want to comment on it. You said there are so many rich stories within Nigeria, within Africa. And I
Yeah.
just want to emphasize this, how this is so true. And as I wrote this on my Instagram page, exactly what you said, Ololade, I was saying there are stories that only you can tell. Only you as a person. Of course, if you would write it into a script, you would give it to, my friend always says, if you would give this story to 10 directors, you would have 10 different films. Um, but also
Yes.
at the beginning, when you write the
Very
script,
true.
it's already like it's only you who could tell a certain story, right? And already Nigeria is so rich with people with the different tribes. So each tribe has their own story, etc., own stories. Then you have a family with their own stories, and then you have your life, and you're watching other people's lives, and that's where you really get the inspiration from. And that's what when we're talking about being authentic again, when you tell those stories from your heart, first of all, the world needs to hear these stories. Like, that's full stop. That's how it
Mm-hmm.
is. And of course, they're also going to be successful because you tell them from your heart, right? That's what
Yeah.
people are looking for. So that's what we started with. But I just want to encourage everyone, like, don't, maybe you don't need to tell the 20th short film about corruption, but maybe you are making a short film about corruption with a specific detail, a specific aspect which is unique. And then again, from there you can go, right? So
Awesome, awesome. I mean, local stories. But the challenge that we seem to have is that there are so many. So we have a challenge in Africa, and that challenge is from the perspective of development. So there's a development gap, right? So people have stories, but how do they meet with people? So it's one thing to have a story, it's another thing to
mhm,
have the capacity to turn that story into a project that can attract financing and that can go on Netflix and on the likes. So there's a
mhm,
development gap. There's also a skill shortage gap as well. So we
mhm,
find that screenwriters are writing scripts, but they are not writing it as they ought to, right? So we have that limited capacity in terms of screenwriting. So we don't have
mhm,
too many amazing screenwriters. The screenwriters who are good, they are really good. And the ones who are bad, they are really bad, right? So there's that. So there's that screenwriting gap, and there's also that development gap as well. So everybody has fantastic stories, right? But how do we get it across? How do we show these stories to the world? How do we reach as many people as
mm.
we reach? How do we get the financing,
Yeah,
right?
maybe the Creative Hub needs to start a screenwriting course for a few weeks and then getting the basics right. And also from there, I mean, you mentioned Netflix, Ololade. For me, I applied to Netflix with a story. I think it was about a year ago, and I got rejected. This year, I applied for script funding, and yesterday I got the notice that I wasn't accepted. But I can meet them and get a feedback, and then I can apply again. So just for like being real and telling you also what's happening behind the scenes. What I want to point out to is you can make a very short film, maybe just a few minutes, and it can already, like, you can start with your mobile phone and just tell it, because often it's not about the technical stuff. Of course, it's also about technical stuff, but always in the foreground is the story. And then
Yeah,
on, you can upload it to YouTube in an invisible modus, or you can upload it to Vimeo. And this link, you can send it to different festivals in the world. It doesn't need to be Netflix right there, right? You can just start with small festivals. You have loads of online festivals now. It came through COVID, and they're choosing winners like every month or every 2 months. So you can apply for a small amount of money, and once you run at a few festivals, people will look at you, and they will kind of know, okay, this works, and we actually, people looked this story up. So this helps already, like starting really small and going step by step.
exactly. Exactly. I mean, starting small is another thing that is quite important. You can't just get there like that. So I have a friend who started with short stories. I mean, and the thing is, if you're dedicated and you put in the work, before you know it, you'll be before Netflix. He started with short stories and he started going to film festivals. And before you need 2 years down the line, his movie is already on Netflix. Right?
Wow.
Yeah, 2 years
Wow.
down, his movie is already on Netflix. So what are we saying? We're saying that you need to start small, but with the end in mind. You have a vision, right? But you
Exactly.
start small, right? You do film festivals, you do YouTube, exhaust all the AVODs, right? Exhaust the platforms that you have ordinarily, the platform that you don't need to struggle to have access to, right? Exhaust those platforms, and then
Hmm.
with time, you realize that by the time you're presenting your movie and your short stories, and even your movies to other bigger institutions, they'll start to pay attention to you. Why? Because you built a certain type of track record. So it's
Yeah.
important you start small. And then you mentioned something. You said online film festivals. I don't mind if I get the links to some of these online film festivals so I can check them out.
So
If you
there's this huge, it's a huge platform. It's called filmfreeway.com. And there you have like worldwide festivals, and you can filter like different ones and then see where you want to apply. So that's definitely possible. And also,
okay.
one thought I just had was, your first movie doesn't need to be perfect, right? Like often we stop ourselves because we think everything needs to be perfect and laid out. I mean, if you're applying with a script to a company or to a process or a fund, your script is going to change. Like it's not going to stay the same way when you show it to people, when you show
Yeah.
it to a fund. You're going to change. You're going to change your script before you start filming, and sometimes even when you're still filming, because you're kind of finding out, okay, this is not going to work, I need to do it in another way, right? So don't get too attached to your ideas, and be open to what's going to change.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Yes, because it's always a steady process of growth. So I figured that even I was running for some, I was applying for some grants, not on the filmmaking aspects now, but I'm working on some development projects. So I was
Hmm.
applying for some grants, and then I saw that what I had envisioned before is not what I'm going to put forward to these people. I had to sit down, process the idea again, break it down into different categories and different inputs, right? So that by the time I'm conveying the information before these people, they will see that I'm communicating the value in this project. So
Exactly.
sometimes things have to change. You don't have to remain this part of growth. You don't have to bring the same thing to the same people over and over again, right? So that's the process of growth that comes with, positioning to be a fantastic filmmaker. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Awesome conversation. I'm really enjoying this conversation.
Me too. Next time we're going to do it live in Lagos.
Yes, absolutely.
So, for
Okay.
example, on Film Freeway, I applied to the Nigerian Woman Film Festival. It's in Abuja. I think it's in autumn or in spring in about a year. So things like that, they are like festivals from all over the place. So
I'm gonna check that out. I'll check the filmfreeway.com. I'm
mhm.
gonna check out the platform to see some of the online festivals that I can always take
Yeah,
advantage of. And of course, when you're coming to Lagos, Nigeria, let me know. To be
of
nice to
course. So that's also like what you said about vision, right? Like I'm planting this seed since a long time, and I know it's gonna happen, but I don't know when yet. So, and I think that's also important when you're a filmmaker. Always, like you said, you can apply to small film festivals, but you don't need to put your dream about Netflix away. If you want to be at Netflix, you're going to be there eventually at some point, but maybe not tomorrow, maybe in a few months, maybe in a year. So,
absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so moving on to the next question. Um, at what point did you actually need the service of a lawyer? I mean, you've done a couple of short films, right? At what point did you think that, okay, I think I need a lawyer here to help me with some contract negotiation and
mhm.
some deals? Yeah.
Yeah. So I just needed one, I don't know, was it 8 weeks ago, 12 weeks ago? Um, I mean, just a recent example. So I'm just going to start with that because the story I'm writing now, I have a co-author, I have a co-writer. I'm not going to work on it alone. And we made not a real contract, but a deal memo. I don't know is it in English the same word? When it's like a pre-contract before you have a proper contract.
So it's more
Um,
like terms of agreement before you have the final contract.
yeah, a little bit like that because we didn't start writing the script yet, but we are sharing the ideas and we are pitching them to different producers. So of course there is already a value in the idea. There's a value in the treatment, which is like 10 pages. And
Yeah.
we kind of wrote down with the help of a lawyer, what are the points of working together? And
Okay.
what happens if we don't want to work on it anymore, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's and then I talked to the lawyer for on the phone for quite a while, because he explained to me this happens actually quite often when you work together with more than one. If you're more than one person in the like writing a script, and you're sharing your ideas on, and then you kind of disagree on terms, what are you doing next, right? Is there like, who is the owner of the idea, who is allowed to develop it further? And I think you, Ololade, are the perfect person to explain this. But I think, for example, at that point, before you're starting, it's already like an important decision to make. So also for your friendship, for your business ship, let's say, and of course for the project and for the script.
Awesome, awesome. I mean, that's a very important aspect of collaboration amongst writers. And I usually tell writers to get the facts straight, right? And that's why it's important that you have the terms of agreement, right? So that as you're pitching, as you're doing all of that, and then once there's a deal, you can now get into a full-time contract and then start to abide with the terms of the contract. But I would say that it's important you get the deal straight, right? It's important that you guys are on the same page. So
Exactly.
before you start to, get into anything serious, have a conversation, right? What happens if I step out? What happens if I'm no longer interested in the deal? Who is the original owner of the idea, right? And these things, they vary with context, right? So I mean, the scenarios are different, the context are different. You might be the owner of the story, and you are just employing somebody to flesh out the story, or you're bringing in a story editor to flesh out the story. That's a different context entirely. Or you can have a screenwriting skill, but because you're too busy, you want to bring in another screenwriter to work and collaborate on that thing together, right? So you guys have to be clear from the onset that this is what's going to happen, and it varies in context. So I would say that that clarity and those conversations are important. And now as you're having these conversations, you cannot bring in a lawyer on board, right? So the lawyer is not going to advise within that context, because there's a whole lot. If I'm going to give an interpretation, we'll need to have a precise context, that's happening between the two writers, or the story editor and the owner of the story, right? And so that's why we have issues with copyright infringement. How do I get paid? I've worked on it for 6 months, but I didn't work for it for another 6 months. What am I getting? So all of these things, right? You have to bring everything into context and have that conversation with the other party. And then once you have that conversation, it's now drafted into terms of agreement. Now, if you see that the story is getting a traction, right? If you see that financiers are coming on board and the story is getting to life, you're getting money for development and all of that, then you can now have a full-time contract. Then when you have those contracts in place, then everybody's held accountable. Now, if there's
Mhm.
any breach of agreement, right, you can sort that out by having. So what we do is when there's this dispute resolution between writers, the first thing is for writers to have a conversation, right? If they feel like they can't resolve the dispute in 7 days after they've had conversations, then it's time to bring in their lawyers, right? They bring in their respective lawyers, they look at the issue. If peradventure they can't resolve it with their respective lawyers, then they take the matter to a negotiation body. Right. So all of these are going to be in the contract, because the contract has to stipulate what is the
Mm.
governing law, and the contract also has to stipulate what is the process for dispute resolution. You see, that process for dispute resolution, it shouldn't be missed in any contract, because that's exactly because it's deemed that both parties have already agreed that this is the process by which we're going to resolve the dispute, which is very important. Now, once that process, because it's a process, dispute resolution clause has to be drafted with clarity, right? You have to draft it as a process, because the dispute resolution has to take place in stages, right? And then once a stage is not accomplished, the next stage follows, the next stage follows until because
Mm.
the dispute has to be resolved, right? And people have to know what they're getting from the contract. So these are just, different
Mhm.
tactics to go around the issue of collaborating with writers. Context, like I said, will vary. right? But
Hmm.
these are the most important aspects that must be taken into consideration.
Mm. And Ulrada, what do you think about like the aspect of time? Like, let's say I have someone and we want to work together and we have this idea. How long would it take to really set up a contract, or like, or let's say like an agreement? Like, we want to start tomorrow to write, and we just have all these crazy ideas, and we want to develop the stories. And then we contact you and we say like, okay, we would like your help. How fast would it be?
Yeah, so drafting an agreement is not really about the lawyer now, it's about both parties, right? If
Mm,
both parties are clear on what they want to achieve, then the lawyer can come in and then do the drafting and the deals. Another
mm.
reason why it's important for you to have a lawyer is that the lawyer understands conflict resolution. A lawyer is a
Can you
good
say that
negotiator.
again? I,
A
I
lawyer
didn't know the
understands
word.
a lawyer understands conflict resolution.
Ah, mm-hmm,
It's like a major skill for a lawyer. A lawyer also understands how to negotiate. So you guys can be at loggerhead, right, at some point. But when a lawyer comes in, the lawyer is coming in with that particular skill set to calm the nerves of both parties and to ensure that there's an amiable solution, right? So the contract drafting is not really it's not really a problem. What's important is that both parties come to terms with what they want to get done. So it's not just
mm-hmm,
about ideas now. There has to be clarity within those ideas. So let both parties be sure of what they want to do. The lawyer comes in to do a term of agreement. Like you mentioned, maybe a deal memo or something. And then after a while, when the story is getting traction, now the purpose of the deal memo is for them to be sure that copyright issues are intact. You can't share this story with somebody who is not a part of the game. You're only sharing it with people who can help us fund, all those things. And then both of you can say, okay, we own the rights and all of that. Then the contract will now further, you know,
mm-hmm.
delve into those issues and bring much clarity to the deal memo, right? And then when there's that clarity, because even a term, the terms itself is also important, but the contract will now give more clarity to the terms. And then once the contract is signed, everybody is good to go. So it's not really about how long to take the lawyer. It's about both parties coming to terms with what they want to achieve and being sure that they are on the same page. Then the lawyer takes that information and interprets it into an agreement. So it's not so much about the time on the lawyer's part, it's about what both parties are willing to achieve together within a particular period of time.
I see. Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
awesome. Awesome. Okay, so I think we have even said a lot about contract from the perspective of the writers, you know, um, and all of that. But I would just also add to that conversation to say that if you're looking to speak to big people, if you want to get executive producers interested in your film, you want to get directors, you want to get funding, you need to have a clean chain of title. And that's where the conversation with myself and Ashbeck just occurred now, right? That clean chain of title is what will be in that contract. You guys have resolved the issue of ownership, right? So clean chain of title is they're documents to show that you own all the IP rights in that particular movie. Are you with me? So you own the copyrights. If it's co-owned, the copyrights are co-owned, right? You have clearances. I'm sure that when you were speaking to that music composer, you also had to get a clearance to use his intellectual property in your short film.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So those clearances are important. If you're going to be using any brand name from any existing and brand ambassador from any existing, company or any creative agency, and you're seeking to collab, because remember that filmmaking is essentially a collaboration. So if you're looking to work with an influencer who has a major brand that has been trademarked, you have to get clearance for that. So this is where all the clean chain of title comes in, because a distributor will not invest in a movie that does not have a clean chain of title. I mean, it's like you're exposing them to more risks, right? So these things are quite important. The clean chain of title. So there's a whole lot. We won't be able to talk about that in full details, but just know that you need clearances for your project, and that it's always important to have somebody on board who can sit on that, because you as the creative, you're thinking of a million and one things. I mean, you can't do everything all by yourself. So having somebody like a business executive or an entertainment attorney to sit on these things and to ensure that all the clocks and all the everything is checked right, it will do you a whole lot by the time you finally come before a development house or an executive producer. Another thing is the contract, right? The contract. By the time you start doing bigger deals as a filmmaker, you realize that you need contracts. Filmmaking is a collaborative project, and you're working with a whole lot of people. You're working with the director, you're working with the producer, you're working with the distributor, you're working with other music artists, you're working with costume agents, you're working with different kinds of people. And you need to be able to check the boxes with contracts. You're working with actors, and actors won't just sign their time away. They want to be sure that okay, there's a contract in place. So how do you one manage costs, and at the same time, how do you ensure that you're not incurring any legal risks? That's a job of a business executive or an entertainment attorney. Are you with me? So the mere fact that you're investing in an attorney also means that you're investing in reducing risks and also reducing costs. Because if you want to film in certain kinds of location, you need a location permit. If not, they can arrest you. Right. So there's a whole lot, and I tell filmmakers that I know you're creative, and I hear filmmakers say, oh, I just love the creative aspect. I just want to create. I just want to create. It's good to create, but look, you have to reduce the risks around such creations, right, by investing in and you see creatives don't want to invest in attorneys, right? We see that a whole lot here, but we see that the most successful creative agencies and the most successful creatives, they have attorneys and they have managers. That's the first thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're running a business and you want to be sure that you're making profits and not incurring risks, right? So this is why you need an attorney to tick and to check all the boxes. So important. Another thing is the protection of your intellectual property. We have said that before. Um, I mean, before you even begin to speak about maximizing the rights that exist in your intellectual property, and before you start to talk about merchandising and all of that, because a creative just called me some weeks ago and was like, oh, I see your content. I mean, you was talking about the importance of IP rights and contracts for filmmaking, how you're working with film producers and all of that. But the thing is, I'm trying to get into I want to position my IP for merchandise, and I laughed. Oh, I laughed. I said, you want to position your IP for merchandise. It doesn't work that way. You need an attorney. You need an attorney in the business, all right, who is sitting in your business and looking for the opportunities for merchandising. The attorney has to be in your portfolio of films, has to understand your catalogs of music, whatever it is, has to run has needs to run techniques on film valuation, has to know what works, what doesn't work. So you can't
Mm-hmm.
just wake up one morning and say you want to go into merchandising. How now? How do you want to do that? Right? So creatives are funny sometimes, right? Well,
Don't say that too loud.
creatives are funny sometimes, but I say that, right, that if you want to get the best, and I'll keep
Mm-hmm.
saying the best creatives that are doing well, go and check them out. The ones that are doing well, they have managers, they have entertainment attorneys, they have business executives. They work and think like an institution. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the investment. That's the investment. They don't just do solo work. You're a creative and you know that you want to go into production, but you can't even, you're running a business, you don't even have a production company. I mean, your company is not even registered at law. How do you want to put the structure in place to attract investors and financing? Even co-production. How do you want to, what is the talent resting on? What structure is the talent resting
Mm-hmm.
on? Do you understand? And that's where we find the difference between the 20% and the 80%. That's the
Mm-hmm.
fact. That's the fact. Those people have invested in structures. They have invested in people that can help them grow their
Mm-hmm.
businesses, right? Um, so I would say that protection of IP is important. So it is when you protect your IP that you can think of merchandising. How do you want to exploit what you've not protected? I mean, it's at risk already because anybody can just take it and fly with it, right? So the foundation for that is the protection of the IP. And there are different rights. A filmmaker would also help you to exploit the relevant rights. There are rights that you shouldn't give out, and there are rights you should give out in co-production, all these financing deals and distributions and the likes. Now it's the attorney that has an insight into these different kinds of rights. The right to do a remake, the right to sequels, the right to merchandising, different kinds of rights. It's the attorney that has that insight. It's the attorney that would say, okay, let's leave this right. Let's drop out this right. It's the attorney that can negotiate with all stakeholders for you,
Yeah,
right?
and also I just sorry for interruption, but what's very important already before when you're writing and then you're selling your idea. In Germany we have a little movement, it's called Contract 18, and it's about script writers who try to get more rights in the filmmaking process. So not only writing the story, but also having a
Same.
look at the final cut, for example. Like they're fighting for this right. And
Yeah.
also different points. And I think it's very important when you sell your story, also like specifically in these contracts, to kind of ask, okay, what's going to happen and which rights are still with me, or which
Yes.
copyright stays with me, and can I have an influence on the story once you start filming, etc. So it's very important what you're saying.
Exactly. Exactly. And I like the fact that you mentioned that Germany has. I think you said. Did you mention that Germany has some regulations that protects the rights of screenwriters? You mentioned Form 18. Is
It's
that
an it's a movement. It's a group of authors and writers, and they're fighting for this. So they're themselves script writers, and it's a
Oh,
group. It's called Contract 18, and they're starting like they're fighting for it. But
interesting.
so yeah, it's very interesting, and it's also new in Germany. So it's you're not in paradise as a writer over here because you don't have a big influence once your script is accepted at a certain point. So that's really really interesting,
It's
and
very
it's
interesting.
always like in German we have this wording. It's called bildet Banden. It means like come together as groups, or like yeah, come together in little groups. And then when you're in a group, you are of course stronger when you're fighting for certain rights. So
Yeah, yeah. Quite interesting. Quite interesting. I mean, one step at a time. At the African Creative Hub, we are working on such a movement as well, because
nice,
the
awesome,
beginning of I keep saying it, the beginning of the film industry, the value chain, at the beginning of that value chain is script writing.
exactly.
So why
It's
should
even the
script
idea. It's even before you have the script, it's the idea. The idea has already a certain worth. So
Yeah. It's the idea. After the idea is the script, because the script is even what can be, is tangible, so the script can be protected. So the script is the beginning of, is the root of the value chain. So why should script writers be relegated? Right? Why should script writers be treated as trash? And then
exactly,
the distributor is there, and the executive producer is reaping all the cash, and the person who brought the idea to life has been paid off. Why
yeah,
can't the person who brought the idea to life have some rights retained? And you see, these are important issues that we need to start to think about, even in Africa as a continent, because we are now exporting interesting content, right? And so we need to position ourselves for, amazing opportunities at every level of the value chain. So I
Exactly.
strongly believe in that. I strongly believe in that. And we're working towards that movement. It will take time, but one thing at a time. One thing at a time, we'll get there.
Exactly. And I mean, as more people are coming together, the more powerful you are, because you have then quite a powerful voice also within the industry, right? Because you can all say we are part of this group, and you're
Yeah.
always stronger together, as we all know. So maybe you don't agree on all terms and positions, but it really it strengthens each individual writer. So,
Yeah.
and filmmaker, of course.
Awesome. So I'll check them out. You said contract 18.
Yeah. We
Okay.
need a link list once we finished Ololade. This big paper. Look at all these links.
Awesome. Awesome.
I don't know if the viewers know this, but maybe you can explain a little bit more later about on the Creative Hub, because it's
Okay.
such a powerful tool, and maybe somebody else wants to be part of it when we're talking about coming together and being stronger together, right? I'm just thinking of
Yes.
it.
Yes, I would. I would definitely put it out there. Okay, so we've said a whole lot and I'm really enjoying the conversation.
Me
Awesome.
too. Before I was like, wow, 1.5 hours. Okay, that's quite a long time. But see, we're like, it's only 20 minutes left, so we're doing quite well.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean, so I've said a whole lot about contracts, IP, knowing what rights to give and what rights not to give. I think I've said a whole lot even about the legal perspective of filmmaking. So I just want to encourage filmmakers to make the investment, right? It's worthwhile. It's
Maybe,
worthwhile.
Olade, can you explain, is there something similar, like what we explained earlier with the actors to pay them at a later point? Is there something similar with when it comes to lawyers and attorneys? Like, is there a possibility? Like, I'm only starting out as a filmmaker, but I have this brilliant idea. I know a lot of people are interested in that. How? But I don't have the money or the resources yet. Can I still approach somebody like you and just be really honest and share this situation and then see and look for a solution?
Well, it depends on the attorney. Some attorneys are
Mm-hmm.
open to such arrangements, and people run different kinds of businesses,
Mm-hmm.
right? Some people are running businesses where there has to be a turnover from time to time. Some people will prefer to be equity partners and
Mm-hmm.
grow with others. So it depends on the structure that the attorney is working with. Also, it depends on the relationship as well. So
Mm.
it's what the attorney is willing to give, right? So there's really no standard structure as such, right? So if the attorney is willing to work with you, or maybe split the money, if there's an arrangement to do a 50-50, you pay 50 initially, and then when the movie reaches a particular milestone, then you can pay another 50%,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's how well you structure the conversation with the attorney, right? So it depends on the attorney, I would say.
Okay. But would you say it's like dare to ask? Like just ask and see what happens? Or would you say don't, that's really rude and unpolite, don't ask at all? What's your
Yeah,
position on that?
you can ask. You can ask.
Okay.
You can ask. I've seen people who actually approach lawyers to make such requests. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when the lawyer sees that, maybe there's a potential here,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they can work out something depending
Mm-hmm.
on what structure the lawyer wants to work out. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm asking because I know in Nigeria, I know very successful filmmakers, but I also know filmmakers who are just starting. So I was wondering what it's looking like, what it looks like. So thank you for this answer.
You're welcome, Ashbig. Thank you so much for this conversation. We are gradually getting to the end of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I would ask you any final words for our viewers. What would you like to tell our viewers as you're departing? Any final encouragement?
Ah, Oh, that's always difficult because I think there's like I said before, like Nigeria is so rich on so many different levels. So I don't really feel like saying anything, but I just want to really, I don't know, like clap my hands and say, like, people, please go out there, be brave. I know loads of you are struggling daily, like all humanity at the moment since a few years, and I think now is a special time for really to be inspirational and be really show your heart and show what's inside of you, and share your stories. I think they're changing the world. I think it's very, very important, and I think it's no coincidence that Netflix and Amazon are gonna be are more interested now in the whole continent and kind of looking for opportunities, and just be really proud of yourself and know your worth, know what you're worth. So talk to a lawyer and attorney, of course. I mean, that's what we just recently what we just discussed. But you are like, it's pure gold. It's pure inspiration. It's you have so much to give. Just go for it. I want to see those short films. I want to hear those stories. And I'm always like, during Berlinale, there was just the big Berlinale Film Festival, and I met two Nigerian filmmakers, and I'm blown away. I was so happy to meet them and talk to them, and I saw one movie from Burkina Faso, and it's rich. It's so rich, seriously. I mean, no surprise, there's Nollywood, of course. So yeah.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. I'm so excited. I'm excited that people are loving our content, right? I mean, there's no better time than to be an African and also to be a Nigerian, right?
Exactly.
Amazing. I mean, and I love the fact that you've charged creatives, right, to know their worth. There's actually an entire movement on that. There's somebody that I know that champions that movement because as a
Ah,
creatives can tend to, yeah, creatives can tend to just undermine their creative abilities, and they tend to shrink. And so knowing your words and presenting your story to the world, knowing that your story can fly, right? Knowing that only you can tell your story, right? So that's important for me. And so this person that is championing this cause, his name is Onye Ubana too.
mm-hmm,
Is actually going to come. He's going to come up on we're having a screenwriting workshop for Africans. That's May. Sorry, that's April. April
mm-hmm.
22nd, 23rd. So he's going to be a speaker, and he's going to be speaking on the importance of collaboration and building a viable brand. Because that guy, that guy from nowhere just rose to become who he is today. And he only did that because he believed in his worth. And so he's beginning to champion that same narrative, right? And he's beginning to transfer that same thing to the generations coming behind him and even young creatives across Africa. He's doing a lot of amazing work in that space. You can follow him. His name is Onye Ubanatu. He's an amazing guy. So he's coming on board. We're going to be having the African workshop for screenwriters 22nd and 23rd of April
Is it
2000.
online or offline?
It's online.
Wow.
It's on, so because it's African, it's for Africans, right? You're free to join if you want to join.
Yeah, I'm already
I
thinking.
you anyways. But really, I mean, so it was made online because we want as many people as possible to be able to participate. So there's no restriction of any sort.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So please make this list of all the links and people and post it on Instagram or on LinkedIn so we can all share.
Awesome, awesome. No problem. You can do that. Thank you so
Are there
much.
any questions from, I don't know, from the group or LinkedIn, or I'm not sure, because now
Uh,
we talked and I can't
yeah,
see the chat.
so yeah, obviously, if there are any questions, we'll get those questions and then we'll most likely address them during our conversations at the African Creative Hub. But right now, we would leave this amazing content to people who would watch after this show because this content is really amazing. Quite inspirational, straight to the point, heartfelt, and very interesting. right? I'm glad to, to be having this conversation with you, and thank you for honoring my invitation, Ashberg. I look
Thank
forward
you
to having
so
more
much.
exciting conversations with you as well.
Yes, me
And
too.
so,
Thank you so much. This was so much fun. And
awesome,
yeah, I look forward to kind of the seed we planted now, like what's growing out of it. So
awesome,
thank you
awesome.
so, so much for asking me and having me here.
Thank you too, Ashberg. Thank you. So we call it a day. It's a wrap. Thank
Yes.
you so much.
Have a lovely afternoon.
You too.
Bye.
Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank
Bye.
you.